Hello there. Today we're doing how to build a floating island. Now, of course, this is not a direct how-to guide, but we're doing a guide on how to make them in general and have it not suck. To start, we're just going to place down a bunch of scaffolding, quickly fly up so that way, ta-da, we now have our starting spot. For the two blocks that most of the island will be built out of, it'll be stone and andesite. Now, there are two ways that you can build your island, but I generally prefer to build first a column. This will be the start of the island. And then depending on whether or not you want to make your island hollow, depends on whether or not you go out and up. I'd recommend this for survival mode when there's less resources, but you can also just build straight out like that. Now to start, since I'm using the out and up strategy, we have our bottom block. And you can either do a bit of a bottom like this, or a very small bottom like this, which is what I'm going to be doing. Well, there are a couple ways to build your island. I found that the one that makes it look the most natural is just to build around and out, so that way it kind of gets this shape, and then you can, of course, shave off the corners to avoid any sort of block-like structures, and just rinse and repeat. And here's a quick time lapse from the first person. Okay, so done with that, and we have our basic island shape, see? Now, one big problem. This doesn't actually look all that good. Looks like a bunch of blocks just heading out in some directions, which is where our second stone block comes in, andesite. Now for andesite, all you're going to be doing is using it to bulk out some areas and make the extrusions of the island seem a lot less artificial and a bit more janky, as I would like to say it is, like that. And of course, you will get parts like this, and that is perfectly okay. For those parts, you just want to highlight them a bit more. So eventually, your initial bottom of the island isn't actually the bottom. Of course, this is especially true with parts like this, whereas you just want to throw on a bit more andesite in a few random splotches to make it not seem completely. Just one side goes straight up, and then ta-da, you have the bottom of your floating island. Now we move on to the top. For the top, you just, well, how I like to do it is I like to surround the outer ring of the island in moss, or just, you don't have to do 1, 2 strategy, you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. Now, as you continue to surround the island, you will have the initial basic shape, before you then move this up 1 block in order to cover your subsequent azalea bushes. So I like to call them bushes, because they seem more like bushes to me. But tell me down below if you think that they are bushes, or if you think that there's something else entirely, because they can be used as decorative bushes. Now I forgot, you need a block right there to place it. But the reason I would like to do this a bit is because it kind of looks, how do I put this, not completely moss-like, and so you just break down a chunk of your island's stone right there, and then just fill that in with moss before building on top of that moss. You place azalea bushes, and then on top of that, you're just going to want to build more moss in, like this. And if you want, you can spruce this up with some grass blocks if you're in a jungle biome, but since I'm in a super flat world and this is a plains biome, it doesn't really look as good if you're going for a lush look. But you can also change the top block depending on the look that you want. This is just going to be a lush island for the purposes of this video. Let's say if you wanted more blood island, use warped nether and crimson nylium, or warped nether block in this. And then use some blue ice if you're going for a blue tone in order to create that other color scheme. How do I put it? But if you just continue filling these in, you'll eventually end up with Star of the Island that looks like this. That's a good surface that you can then use where you just build down a bit, because this moss is acting more like surface fungus that's just growing off to the side. And then if you want, you can form that into a chain that leads all the way down. I'm not going to do that in this video because that would take too long, but just doesn't really need to look the greatest. It just needs to look okay, like that. And then maybe one more right here before we move on to the structure on top. There we go. Now that we have that done and the island's underside doesn't look completely terrible, let's add a bit more to the underside. The way that we're going to be doing this is with vines. And where are they? Hanging roots as well. Where's the glowberries? I always forget where they are. There we go. And your glowberries. Now you just go in. And place these down a bit, so that way when they grow berries on them, the underside of the island isn't completely dark. Once again, this is the example that I'm doing is a lush island, so you don't really need to worry that much before placing in your hanging roots in some places. And then just chucking some vines on everywhere else. And these vines will be a really good way to build up. And if you want to make it more of an abandoned temple vibe, they're really good. Now we return all of this to there. We go over to stone. I'm going to be picking out some mossy variants of all of the blocks, as well as some cracked ones. So and don't forget a few regular ones as well. Now we use basic stone bricks to build. What type of building should I build on top of this island? I'm thinking maybe a temple like those in the background. Yeah, that'll work. So step 1, build out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom. Base structure is done. I just gotta fill it in. Well, yes, you'll be filling in a bunch of your already pre-existing great under bits of the island. You can, of course, skip the bits underneath where you're going to build if you already know what you're going to build on top. Let's also get some regular stone brick stairs to not have a completely vine-filled, or whatever they are, experience. Place that there, but place that there, and then that there, and just gotta finish it off. So, ta-da! Now you have the base done. Now we can move on to some cracked pillars. And just maybe some Maybe some mossy pillars. Maybe a regular pillar. And yeah, you know what? Let's do another mossy pillar. Now we have this done. Just gotta take our stairs, place them on either side like this. I guess this has turned into a bit of a tutorial. Whoops. And then grab your slabs and place them down in the middle before placing your stairs all around the top. And before then fill in your top bit. I'm just going to be using one block for that. And then slowly but surely build up to the top. Or you can build something like that. And then in the center here, I'm just going to place one. Block all around. So that way we can then place something there. Now, what is it? Okay. Now then, what is it I should place atop this floating island? Tell me down in the comments below. And I will see you soon in this spot in a short. Goodbye.